change in boxing is good. With the new advent of HBO leaving the boxing game, I think we have to understand that the landscape for boxing from the business perspective is changing. Um, for the most part, it's always been the wild wild west for boxing, but at the same time, it was very top heavy when you got major networks like Showtime, HBO controlling pay-per-view, and the other networks slowly, in the past got out of boxing. There was nothing being televised for the most part. Since it was very top heavy, the sport kind of went underground, and the major stars were really the only ones getting attention and getting the money. But now you're seeing, with the collapse of HBO, and also at the same time Mayweather, retiring, you're seeing a different era starting to kind of unfold right in front of our eyes. You got the DAZN being a platform for combat sports in general, particularly taking a stab at boxing at the same time. It's almost simultaneous. As HBO collapsed out of boxing, the DAZN goes into a heavy marketing campaign, and it's by no surprise. There is a reason for that. You see that there's no major stars. The stars are starting to whittle away. They're getting older, they're retiring. The sport is changing. I think that the business of boxing is also adapting to that change. And I think that the DAZN, I haven't heavily looked into it, but the concept is, they're going to become the Netflix sort of combat sports, and that's gonna pose a threat to boxing, and maybe even mixed martial arts in a way. But I think that the industry of MMA is kind of safer in that regard, because they understand their business is different. They have television deals, and they're growing. They grow things organically. Their payment structure is different. Boxing has traditionally been very top heavy, and everybody who makes money is either a superstar or on a big network. But now I think you're going to see where that wild wild west of boxing is going to produce change, and that change is in the form of the DAZN. It's going to be ESPN trying to reestablish themselves in the boxing game, as HBO disappears. So Showtime is the only one in the pay-per-view premium network space that still produces boxing. So it will remain to be seen where where they're gonna stand when it comes to boxing. So we got to stay tuned for that. But I think it's a good thing. It forces the industry to change. It forces the consumers to maybe use a different platform to consume the content, because pay-per-view is really dead. You know, Outside of maybe huge fights, I think the pay-per-view model is not going to grow the sport. And the issue with boxing, and the people who are in boxing, they think that boxing is not dying, but it's becoming an underground sport. There are other sports that have come and take the spot of boxing over the last 50 years as the number one sport in America, or one of the top three in America, or in the world for that matter. And if they don't find a way to evolve the model of boxing, from the sport perspective as well as the business perspective, it's going to be harder and harder for people to make a living who aren't superstars. Whereas in other sports, you can make a decent living, you know, participating in the sport while not being an absolute superstar, because there's a set of economics in place to keep the sport to grow in a way that isn't going to suffocate when you're not so top heavy. So it remains to be seen. So I'm out.